Lawmakers in the UK have approved an official report that found that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson deliberately misled or lied to Parliament about parties that were held during the COVID-19 lockdown. You may remember Johnson gave up his seat in Parliament when the findings were announced. Here is the Leader of the House.
This matters because the integrity of our institutions matter, and the respect and trust afforded to them matters. This has real-world consequences for the accountability of members of Parliament to each other and the members of the public they represent.
Real-world consequences beyond the UK. Let's try and open up the story and compare what's happening there with what's happening in the United States. And to do that, I'm joined tonight by Greg Swenson. He heads the group Republicans Overseas in the UK. Greg, it's good to have you on the program. Is this a victory for common decency and respect for the law and respect for truth in politics in the UK?
Yeah, I'm not sure it is. I think this is very much a power struggle in the party, in the Conservative Party, as opposed to the U.S., where it's a struggle between the left and the right, the Democrats and the Republicans. This is very much a power struggle in the Conservative Party. And, recall that it was only, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that Boris Johnson had a record victory in the elections and had an 80-seat majority. And yet you've seen so many people in his own party turn against him. So it's a little different, but there's a lot of similarities as well. Well,
let's pick up on this idea of a power struggle inside the Conservative Party. I mean, you're right. He had an impressive election victory in the last 4 years, but we've also seen him, basically forced to leave office, resign because his own party turned against him. What does that tell us, though, about the ability of the Conservative Party to distance itself from a leader that may become malignant to the party or to democracy itself?
Yeah, I don't think they can at this point. And that's the tragedy of it all, is there was so much momentum, so much wind in the sails for the Conservative Party in 2019 and even in early 2020. Obviously COVID was disruptive to that, but I think that what's interesting to see is there's been no apologies about the lockdowns. All the party is arguing about is, the hypocrisy of it, and there's plenty of that, don't get me wrong, but there's really been no understanding or apology of what they did to this country, and that's really a shame.
Well, that wasn't the topic of the inquiry, and I'm wondering, do you think Boris Johnson's fall from grace here, is it complete? I mean, have we seen the last of him in British politics?
It's a great question, and I don't think so. I think he has the ability to come back. I think it will take a while. There is a lot of talk that he's over and done and finished, but he's a talented retail politician. I might have been a critic of him for governing too far to the left. He won with a conservative majority and yet governed almost like a labor minister would, but. So there is plenty of criticism about Boris, but you can't doubt that he's a gifted retail politician, and I think that means that he will always have the ability to come back.
But we also have to say that he is a retail politician who is factually challenged, and that's been shown several times. He's been called out for lying to Parliament. And compare that to former U.S. President Donald Trump, who has now been indicted on federal criminal charges related to mishandling of classified information. He remains the leading figure of the GOP. I mean, how do you explain that to people outside the U.S. or there in the UK?
Yeah, it's difficult to explain, of course, but I think the big difference is here in the UK, it's the party is having a power struggle within the party, whereas in the U.S., it's left versus right. It's Democrats versus Republicans. It's the inner circle of Washington, and in some ways the weaponization of the Justice Department and other parts of the bureaucracy in Washington that are attacking Trump, but not just Trump, it's attacking Republicans in general. I think that will change in the next 6 months as you see a bit of a, during the campaign with Republicans running against each other for the nomination. I think you'll see a little bit of difference, but right now it is definitely left versus right, as opposed to here in the UK.
Let me just ask you, truth in politics, where does it lie more this evening? In the UK, in the Tory party, or in the US GOP?
Yeah, well, I think in the Tory party, they're having difficulty with the truth. There's no doubt that, that Prime Minister Johnson has had some difficulty with that, as has President Trump. I think what you'll see in the US is an emergence of a new generation of Republicans that are actually telling the truth all the time. President Trump has a problem with hyperbole. There's no doubt about it. I think that perhaps the electorate is growing tired of that. And you'll see, whether it's Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or Mike Pence or Tim Scott, I think you'll see a different Republican Party in the next 6 or 12 months.
Yeah, well, left or right, as long as we can stick to the truth with all the parties, I think everyone would be in agreement that would be best for everyone. Greg Swenson.
I think that would be great.
Yeah.
And you'll see it. You're seeing from the left in the U.S. as
Greg,
well.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're out of time, unfortunately, but I appreciate you joining us tonight. Come back again and talk with us again. Thank you.
Will do. Thanks a lot.